What is up, you guys? It is your boy, Phoenix Brenton here, and today's video, we are going to be talking about my Week 12 NFL predictions. Now, before we get to today's video, as you could probably tell, my camera is a little bit more different now, and it's because my room has been changed. I'll explain everything when one, it's fully finished, and two, in a different video. So not in this video because that's not what we're here to talk about. All right. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And I just realized that's different. Well, not up to date, but whatever. But anyways, like and subscribe. We're on the road to getting to 700 subscribers. But anyways, enough said. Let's get into the video. So, looking at my current NFL record in terms of predictions, I am 107, 56, and 1. So, what does that particularly mean? Well, I officially gotten over 100 100 correct predictions. A little bit under 60 predictions, kind of hoping for it to not get to 100, which I think I basically just don't have. I have to probably get at least 4 to 5 right per week to have that not happen. I think somewhere around there. I don't know. And one tie because of the Packers game. So Packers and Cowboys game to be specific. But yeah, I really want to try to get this to like maybe 150, but we'll just have to wait and see. So to start off, let's start up with the AFC teams, which we have Thursday night, which is the Buffalo Bills taking on the Houston Texans. And this game is very interesting because the Bills have, I feel like, kind of struggled against good AFC teams this year to some extent. Like, they did end up losing, like, they've lost to, like, the Falcons, they lost to the Dolphins, and they've also lost to the Patriots. So they've lost 3 games, and 2 of them have been in their own conference. Or not in their conference, their own division. And then obviously the one exception being the Atlanta Falcons. But I still also think that's kind of weird to think about it today. Like the fact that the Falcons beat the Bills back then, that's kind of weird to think about. But anyway. And then you have Houston, who been piling up some wins with despite CJ Stroud being injured. And they're kind of almost back in the playoff. Well, they're back in the playoff race. They're currently in the playoff hunt, but they're still kind of struggling to getting there. But with this in mind, though, even if Houston with home field advantage, which I think makes this a little bit closer than it probably can be, I do have the Buffalo Bills winning this game. I just think, again, the Bills are just I think they're just a way better football team. I mean, offense, I think they're way better, but defense, it's kind of a close one, and maybe Houston, honestly, so I can't wait to see Josh Allen against the Houston Texans defense, which has been pretty good this year. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Colts, they were just enjoying their nice healthy bye week after the Germany game. And then you have the Kansas City Chiefs, which have lost their 5th game this season against the Denver Broncos, after they had their bye week than the week before that. So that's kind of interesting. I do wonder, and this is kind of a must-win game for KC. Here's exactly why I say this is a must-win for KC. The reason why I say it's a must-win for KC is because if you kind of lose this game, you kind of have a decent chance of missing out on the postseason. And again, or kind of hold by a thread currently, and that's not a good thing, to be exact. But I do think the Chiefs are going to win this game. Again, home field advantage, and I think the Colts are just going to have a very hard time playing the game in Arrowhead. I feel like if it was taking place in Indianapolis, I would go with the Colts. But since it is taking place in Arrowhead, give me the Chiefs. Then we have another Sunday game, and this game's going to probably not be a fun game to watch. We have the New England Patriots taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. Patriots put pretty quick work against the New York Jets on Thursday, so they had a nice little mini bye week. While then you had the Cincinnati Bengals, which they, as well, got destroyed against a Pittsburgh Steelers team, and half of that, or partial of that game, they didn't even have Aaron Rodgers. So it's kind of just, again, kind of going to be which team has the better which team has the better defense, and it's going to be the Patriots. Give me the Patriots. Plus, the Patriots have been just a really good team against Cincy. I just don't see that happening. Plus, at this point, Cincy kind of just should tank for a top draft pick. That's my opinion. And heck, honestly, might as well start Jake Brown or Joe Flacco for the rest of the year, because guess what? You're not going to do anything this year. Then, also, we have another kind of just ugly game to watch as well. We have the New York Jets taking on the Baltimore Ravens. I know the Jets have won 2 straight before they lose to the Patriots, but don't forget, those 2 teams were kind of not great teams. And those are the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns, just to mention that. And also, they are starting Tyrod Taylor, which I just don't think is a smart option, in my opinion. And then you have the Baltimore Ravens, which they just recently barely beat the Cleveland Browns, even though the Jets have barely beat them. And people are going to think, oh, maybe the Jets might win this game. No, give me the Ravens. Come on. The Ravens are just a way better team, in my opinion. Then we have battle of 2 teams that are definitely not going to make it to the playoffs this year. We have the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Cleveland Browns. The Browns, they unfortunately lost basically their only hopes and dreams of making it to the playoffs at this point, which to be fair were very slim, against the Baltimore Ravens. And then you had the Las Vegas Raiders, which also kind of lost their hopes and dreams of making it to the playoffs against the Dallas Cowboys. So it's kind of just a battle of the ugly, and unfortunately, which team's going to have the worst draft pick probably heading into the draft. And to me, it's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. And I just think it's because of home field advantage as well. I think they do get the win here, and it's honestly just a game that I don't think a lot of people are going to really particularly want to watch. Then we have the AFC versus NFC matchups, and all of these are very interesting, except one, which I'll get to that one. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Chicago Bears, arguably the most interesting one of all. Steelers, they are expected to not have Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think he is expected to even play at all, and Mason Rudolph will be the starting quarterback for this game. And then you have the Bears, who have recently been on a winning skid, I believe like a 3 or 4 game winning skid. Yeah, it has been 3-game winning skid. So that's good. And I think the Bears are going to win this game. I know I've been kind of talking a lot of smack about the Bears as recently. I do think that the Bears are probably one of the most overrated teams in the league right now. And I think it's kind of lucky that they are end up winning the division. And although I do think that's true, I think they're probably going to win this game. And I mean, just to look at the comparison right now, this is the rest of their schedule, not including this game. They have the Eagles and the Packers then on the road. Then they're at home against the Browns and the Packers, which the Browns are not an easy football team to beat. Same thing with the Packers. Then they're on the road against the Niners, and then they finish their season at home against Detroit. They have a very tough schedule ahead. I think they could probably squeak into the playoffs with that schedule, but you have to win at least probably 2 to 3 games to even make it into the playoffs, which is also including this one, which is kind of lucky for the Bears that Aaron Rodgers won't play. Then the next game, another ugly game, we have the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Tennessee Titans. I know the Seahawks just as recently just kind of got wrecked on especially offense against the LA Rams. But, I mean, I think their defense is very stellar. And then you have the Titans, which I think they barely just lost to the Houston Texans. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks here. I mean, come on. The Seahawks have arguably one of the best defenses in the league, which is what Tennessee's offense has struggled against. And their defense, although hasn't been that bad this year, isn't great. And I don't think they're like the Rams, in my opinion. And then we have another game where we have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this game is a little bit interesting, I do think. You have Jacksonville, which just recently destroyed a pretty banged up LA Chargers team, making them have now the 6th seed in the playoff race. And then you have the Arizona Cardinal. Actually, I don't think they quite have that yet, actually, because they're a game behind, but technically they are higher ranked, I think. And then you have the Arizona Cardinals, which they got destroyed against the Niners, and also, I think, ruined their hopes and dreams in making it to the playoffs. Maybe. But at this point, it's kind of just, I think, who honestly probably has the better defense here, because I do think both offenses are very well, and I think a lot of people kind of sleep on Jacoby Brissett in that offense. But to me, I do think the Jacksonville Jaguars will win this game. I think this is going to be a high-score game, but I think Jacksonville will get the slight edge, even though it is taking place in Arizona. I think Jacksonville should handle that just fine. Then we have the NFC games, and we have the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers, they won a very kind of not great matchup against New York. Really should have destroyed them, honestly, but regardless. And the Vikings, which they played a relatively close game, despite how ugly their offense was, against the Chicago Bears. And I think with that in mind, though, I do have the Green Bay Packers to win this game. I mean, the Vikings, yeah, they're still in the playoff race, and they kind of do have to almost win every game to get there. But to me, I think Green Bay get the upper hand here, especially with the home field advantage to winning this game. Then we have another just ugly matchup. Jesus Christ, with these ugly matchups. We have the New York Giants taking on the Detroit Lions. The Giants, with their first game now without Ryan Dable coaching, they did play a solid job against the Green Bay Packers. Now they have to go against the Detroit Lions at home on the road, which is a lot probably more tougher than playing Green Bay at home. A little bit of my opinion there, but anyway. And the Lions, they lost a very ugly matchup against Philly, even though I think part of that was kind of just because of a bad referee call, and they probably could have won that game. Whatever. The point is they lost, and they kind of just have to deal with it. And to me, I do have the Lions to win this game pretty easily. I understand, like, people are going to be like, oh, wait, didn't the Giants just barely beat the Packers? Or barely lost to the Packers? And by the way, the Packers beat the Lions week 1? That's not how that works. Because if that's how that works, then the Eagles should have not almost lost their game against the Packers. Or the Lions. Which that also meant that the Eagles should be unable to lose to the Packers. You kind of get what I mean by that, but anyway. Then we have an NFC South showdown to literally who's going to win last place in that spot, because it certainly ain't the two other teams that aren't here. We have the Atlanta Falcons taking on the New Orleans Saints. And this game is just going to be an ugly game to watch. We got the Atlanta Falcons, which they just lost Michael Penix for the year. And while that, losing to the Carolina Panthers and also losing all their basically hope and dreams of making it to the playoffs. Then we had the New Orleans Saints, which they were enjoying a nice and healthy bye week after getting a win against the Carolina Panthers, which once again beat the Falcons, which they are on the race right now to winning the division. Or I should say on pace, but anyway. But I do think with this game, especially taking place in New Orleans, I do have the Saints to win this game. This is going to be a very, very ugly game to watch, and I kind of really feel bad for these two fan bases because unfortunately one of these teams are going to win and get a worse draft pick, and that's probably going to be the Saints. And then we have an NFC East showdown. We have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Dallas Cowboys. The Eagles, they just recently, again, won a very, very ugly game against the Detroit Lions. And then you have the Dallas Cowboys, which just smothered the Raiders and had a very good defensive performance, which is normally just something they haven't had all year. And I do think this is a bit of an interesting game here because, again, the Eagles, they haven't really been at on-pace team. But then you have Dallas, who've kind of been are a little bit hot right now, so it is going to be very interesting. But I do think if the Eagles win, which is if, I think they are easily, without a doubt, locked their division up for this entire year. And that's kind of very simple, honestly. But if Dallas wins, then they might have an opportunity to potentially choke the division. But just that. But with that in mind, I do have the Eagles win this game. I mean, come on. I know they got Quentin Williams and Logan Wilson, but come on. Are you really seriously telling me that's going to stop their Eagles offense, which, yeah, hasn't been that as insane as a unit as it was last year? You can't tell me that that's going to change anything, because guess what? I don't think it will. Then, to me, probably my favorite matchup to watch out of every single one of these games, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the LA Rams. The Buccaneers, they just recently lost to the Buffalo Bills by kind of a decent margin, unfortunately. And then you had the Rams, which played a very, very close game in what was not a great offensive performance against the Seattle Seahawks. And I do think with that in mind, though, I do have the Rams to win this game. I understand the Bucks definitely had the better performance going against Seattle, because guess what? Both of these teams ended up beating Seattle. But to me, though, the Rams are I think a way better team right now, and especially with all the injuries Tampa have, give me the Rams. And then we have the Monday night game where we have the Carolina Panthers taking on the San Francisco 49ers. The Panthers, they just recently beat the Falcons after losing to the Saints. And then you had the Niners, which just destroyed the Arizona Cardinals in front of everybody who watched that game. And I think with that, though, in mind, I do have the Niners to win this game. It's home field advantage, which I think is a pretty huge. And plus, I think the Niners are just a way better coach team and way better talent-wise as well. Then we have the bye weeks and which team deserved it the most and which team deserves it the least. And I think the most is a very close race between two teams here, which are the teams that are number 1 and 2. And it's going to be the Chargers that I think get the number 1 spot. I mean, come on. Like, they're banged up with injuries. They just got destroyed by the Jaguars, which, yes, they are a playoff team. But that's the problem. They're not really much after that. Which is kind of why it's a little concerning that they got destroyed like they did against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And speaking of a team that starts with C, we have the Commanders up next on the list. I mean, come on. You just lost to the Dolphins. I mean, obviously their season's already done, which is kind of why this bye week doesn't mean so much to them. But again, they're also coming back from Germany, or actually from Spain, which could also affect things. Then the next team up, I think, is going to be the Denver Broncos. I understand they've had a very high win streak, which is why you could probably say they deserve the least here. But the problem with that, I think, is that, once again, I think they could use some time to rest after, again, winning like 8 games and a lot of them being one-score games. And then you have the Miami Dolphins. I think it's just because, again, they've won the last of, the 3 of the last 4 games. And I just think with that in mind, it kind of makes it very easy for me to say, yeah, they could definitely use a. I don't think they really need to bye week as much. And also, funny enough, and I just kind of want to talk about this right now, one of the top 10 draft picks right now, currently, are a team that doesn't even own their top 10 draft pick, which is pretty sad, honestly, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know why you traded for James Pierce Jr. Just gonna be honest. And also, Tennessee will still continue to be the only team that, 1, hasn't won a game in their conference, and 2, not have multiple wins. Which means they could be on pace to having the least amount of the least amount of wins in a 18 regular season. So, very interesting if they actually do that or not. But once again, we'll just have to wait and see on that. But anyways, guys, I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. And by the way, and I just kind of checked this a little bit ahead of time, this is indeed the second last week of bye weeks. We have one more, which is not next week, but the following week is when we have bye weeks because it's the Thanksgiving game, so they aren't having that there. But anyways, I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'll explain everything with my room and blah 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 in a more, I guess, in a personal video. But anyway, enough said. See ya.